Level is more of a dynamic schedule. And now it's getting a bit complex. You need to take into account a lot of moving parts. It's more difficult. You have to resolve conflicting priorities, and you have to anticipate surprises. This starts to require some real planning. We need to build a schedule. Schedules are starting points. Schedules are not prisons and constraints. They tell you what you're doing if everything kind of goes according to what you hope it's going to go as. While also being aware you need to be ready to adjust as new information comes in. I have yet to meet a mom that doesn't get this. Sometimes, though, people who aren't parents don't always like, well, why do they have to interrupt? Well, you know, when you have kids, they're going to interrupt. So parents usually get that really easy. But now you have to start doing some real planning in there. What you're after up to this level is balance. First things first, let's put in the big rocks first. Or at least prioritize the big rocks. Make sure the big rocks, the big things in your life are going to go in. Make sure the day-to-day busy work, as much of it as needs to get done, which is the gravel, doesn't end up filling up your day to the detriment of the big rocks. Make sure the small rocks get in there before the sand, which is just the urgent, kind of sometimes irritating stuff that just kind of interrupts. And prioritize so you get it all in there. And then that's the idea of balance. And you'll see that in a lot of planning seminars, time management seminars, energy management seminars. Some people will say, well, you can't manage time, like you can't mismanage time and end up with 23 hours in your day. But boy, does it feel like it though, huh? You wish you could mismanage time and end up with 30 hours sometimes. But my friend and I used to joke, saying, okay, we need two things. One is we need 30-hour days. But two is we need no one who's making work for us to get that extra 6 hours. Just we get the 6 hours. And so then we get to college level stuff, what I call rock wall scheduling. Now this is very complex. When you have more parts than can fit, you have to think of the whole and the parts and how it all comes together. This is very difficult. You may have to start making some hard choices. There may be some stuff you're going to have to start taking out. Stuff you're going to have to do what we call shaping. You may have to cut long-standing practices. So this has just always been the way you've done it. It's always worked for you, but you can't do it that way anymore. Maybe you always liked it this way, and maybe it's comfortable for you, but you need to be more effective now. You need to be more efficient now. Maybe you really like to do it pen and paper, but you really kind of need to do the technology because you can't spend that much time on it. It requires some creative planning. First, you have to look at the whole, then the parts, and how to shape the parts to fit the whole, and be flexible enough to make changes as things change. The technique there is called shaping. And shaping is when you start changing how you and an activity or an event interact. That's when you start looking at things in your life and start trying to figure out, how do I approach this differently? How can I craft this differently so that it fits more easily in my life? Now what gets to be interesting on this is that often we find there's chunks of our life we never thought about. Like, here's a fairly simple one. Television. People they don't think about TV. Just at some point the TV goes on and then it's on. And they don't wonder, say, well, how many different ways do I have to interact with it? One of which is, do I even need to? Like, am I actually interested in what's on, or is it just on? And am I just getting sucked in? Does anyone ever, like, you put on something and then 2 hours later you're wondering what you're watching? Or you're watching it and you're wondering why you're watching it, but then you keep watching it anyway. So we've all done stuff like that. I mean, sometimes it's amazing how many places now, like, that's what we do. We can even be like people in sales, and they never thought of how am I interacting, not just when I'm making a presentation, but with the entire process. How am I interacting with how I'm networking? How am I interacting with my list? Am I doing it in an efficient way, in an effective way? How am I interacting with my kids? A lot of times we say this, time with the family is important. Okay, well, what does your time with your family look like? If it's you're all just sitting in the same room, staring at the same TV, all watching the same program, and none of you even knows why you're watching it, is that the kind of family time you wanted to prioritize? Is that the kind of family time that you want to take away from what you're building? Or is the kind of family time you want to have that's worth not building your business going to be the kind of family time where you're sitting and having a meal together, where you're talking? Or at least if you're sitting down and you're watching something all of you enjoy, that's a shared experience that you can talk about later, so you can use the experience later. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've used just the experience of watching Supergirl on the episodes where Superman showed up, and how much more we like the Superman in the Supergirl series than the Superman in the movies. Does that mean that watching that episode ends up having a lot more value than I got to spend an hour watching an episode? And because there's more connections, there's more to it. So in my life, I dropped a whole bunch of programs that, I'm really not that interested in that program. And so I'm just going to drop it. Now, one of the programs I kept, even though I'm not interested in it, because I know people who are, so I know that program will be a topic of conversation. And then I decided, okay, how am I going to shape how I interact with it? Because I don't want to spend like an hour on Facebook and an hour watching TV. Could I spend my Facebook hour with the TV on? Easily. Could I also clear all of my email at the same time? I can at the very least sort through and trash all the trashy emails, right? And those delete the emails and make my list. Okay, I need to get back to this, but I need to look this up and do my list making while the program's on. So I can interact with the simple activity of my entertainment differently. And that's shaping. When you do next level shaping, this is grad school level, this is what we call part of puzzle piece planning. And that's when you take shaping to the next level that allows you to start using an even more advanced techniques. How do I start to get these things to kind of start weaving together and pairing together differently? A simple example that makes it pretty obvious how this kind of thing can work is suppose I'm taking my leadership team to Las Vegas for a convention. And that I'm leaving it with my wife. Is there any reason why, so long as we're in Las Vegas anyway, that my wife and I could decide to stick around a little bit longer? That's an easy slip in there. And so say if we're doing like Sunday to Sunday, could I go out with my wife on Thursday or Friday? And we get a few vacation days in before the team shows up, or do it on the other side. Even on the trip, could we decide we're going to do something like, okay, we're going to set one day aside for a date night. So all the couples can go on a date, and all the singles can just head out and go do some activity. And so you grab a family time, a couple time, connected to a business time. Because just because you're there for business doesn't mean you're not allowed to be husband and wife, right? Doesn't mean you're not allowed to be friends. And so those are some simple examples that anybody can do for puzzle piece planning. Now when you start to do it with just business, what you're working on is the sophisticatedly complex, creatively difficult, creative sculpting and fitting, and how things will fit together in multiple areas of your life. Being able to do something while in the context of something else is the very simplest version of that. Now it's looking at how do I fit in my school time with my job time, with my social time, and how do I weave all these things together seamlessly so I just have one smooth thing going on. Like part of it for me tonight or today is I get to have my mother here watching me give my talk. And my stepdad's here watching me give a talk. Why is this important to me? Because they're moving to Texas. So there's not going to be a lot of opportunities to do this pretty soon. That if they're going to see me talk, I'm going to have a book speech somewhere, and they're going to have to fly there, unless I happen to be giving a talk in Georgetown. And so that's some puzzle piece stuff. And tonight I have an dinner date. And I did with someone I've never met. It's kind of a semi-blind dinner date with someone who's down here from Sacramento. And it's kind of how can I weave my whole schedule together and put my morning together or put my last night together to prep for everything I need for today, including all my social stuff, coordinate all of my pieces, and so all the pieces just flow one into another without having to go here, stop, shift gears, here, go, shift gears, here, go, shift gears. And being able to handle multiple things bumping into you, not multitasking. Who here multitasks? Good. Because there's a saying, multitasking is worse than a lie. If you're actually consciously trying to work on two things at the same time, your brain has the gear switching time in between. And so it's losing. You're much better if you finish one thing and do something else. Now there's related stuff to that, and we're going to talk about some of that. What we call net time, the no extra time, and it's making use of time that's not being used for anything. So can I do a mental thing while I'm doing a menial physical thing? Like, can I be listening to an instructional audio while I'm driving my car? Yeah, totally. And so that's what we call net time. And then there's double duty time. So if I have a load in the laundry, do I have to wait until the load in the laundry is done before I can do something else? No, I just need to put the laundry in, and then I can do something else until it's done. And if I'm still busy doing something else, I can sit in the washer for a while. And that's double duty time. Something else is happening, but I'm not having to be washing the clothes. I just throw it in the machine, and the machine's doing it. And so that's what we call double duty time. I'm not doing more than one thing. I'm not trying to split my brain. I'm just letting more than one thing happen at the same time. Like when I have my program on and I'm deleting my emails, so I need much brain power if I have a second. No, what if I'm trying to write an important email? Should I be doing that and try to pay attention to the program? No. If I did a good job on the email, I probably miss what happened on the show. If I didn't miss what happened on the show, do not send that email. Because I did not do a good job on it. That's what's okay, I need to write that one later. When you get to the more advanced levels of puzzle piece planning, getting it all to start going, you start to upgrade how well you personally shape what you can shape, and how you look at everything over which you have control, and you build it or you change it to fit. And where it gets more complicated now is when you start to coordinate with someone else. Now you're getting the more sophisticated puzzle piece planning. Now, most parents of multiple children do this just to get their kids everywhere the kids need to be, or to attend all parent-child functions when there's more than one at a time. And so a very simple thing, we had a parent-teacher night. We have two parents, and we have two kids at the school. One parent takes one kid, one parent takes the other kid. Pretty simple and straightforward, right? You just take that idea and you advance it into your business work. And so what do you need to do? What do I need to do? What can we both be doing at the same time? What needs to be sequenced? What are you going to have to wait on me to have done before you can do your part? What am I going to have to wait on you to have done before I can do my part? Is there a way you can do your part that facilitates my part? Is there a way I can do my part that facilitates your part? Now this is especially easy when you have like the boss and the assistant, because then the boss basically tells the assistant, this is what I need from you. So if I decided one of my best uses of my time is to make my calls while I'm in the car, because if I'm driving in a place that has rush hour traffic and I'm going to spend 90 minutes getting home, let me make my calls. In order to do that, I need to have this information, and I need to have it sent to me electronically, so that way I can make my calls electronically, because I don't want to have a pad of paper with a whole bunch of notes on it, and be thinking I'm going to be dialing any phone numbers while I'm driving. I want to be able to just have the phone make the phone calls and say, Siri, call, whatever's next on the list. Or be able to just touch the screen when the call is being made. I don't want to have to hunt the exit because I can't. And so that's beginning to start to work on the puzzle piece planning with people. And the more you do it with larger teams, the more intricate this gets. General contractors often do things like this when coordinating with subcontractors that have to work in sequence on a job, where you can't have the drywallers come in before the electricians are finished, or you're going to have a problem. Because once the drywall's up, the electricians can't get their conduit run. Or you have the conduit run, and I saw one thing where someone actually drilled a hole in a drain pipe to run the conduit for the electrical. You don't have to be a contractor who knows, like, I may not be an electrician or a plumber, but I am pretty sure that was a bad idea. And if the drywaller showed up before anyone saw that, you can imagine. So imagine trying to coordinate that tightly as a general contractor when you're working with peers. When it's not the general contractor orchestrating, you have to work with your team. And especially if your team isn't even just your team in your business, you're working with a team with multiple independent contractors, multiple vendors, multiple suppliers, or you're trying to do this kind of thing. So clearly that gets pretty advanced. And here's probably the surprise. None of that was the topic of the talk. That was the preparation for the topic of the talk. Gemstone Treasurecraft. This requires genius, insight, complexity. You can't do this without a lot of reflection. Genius, plan level difficulty. It's hard to plan it, and it's hard to stick to the plan. It requires creative crafting, and you gotta go for it. The metaphor here is making jewelry. It's making your life into a valuable treasure, if anyone notices a theme here, and a work of art. It's distilling down the key actions. What are your key actions that make the most difference? For most people, this will just be aspirational. Most people will never get to this, but some of us need to do this just to have a life worth living. If you're one of those business people where you're working a job, you're taking care of a family, and you're trying to get a business going, you probably need to do this, or your life is going to be nothing but work. You're going to feel like you're scrambling to keep up with life as life is living you. You are not living life. If you can just get half a beat ahead of life, now you're living life. But if you're half a beat behind life, life is living you. For work, responsibilities and crises can end up dominating our lives for seasons at a time. Anyone ever watch people do management by crisis? Anyone ever got sucked into management by crisis? Well, you don't have to make a decision of anything you're doing today. You're just going to show up and find out what fires are burning, and you're going to spend your day trying to get that fire out. That if that's how your life gets driven, it's really hard to get on top of life. Now, even if you only need this to get out of crisis, it's a handy way to be able to think. It lets even very busy people, not just to survive, but actually live life, to be able to find the places that you can build in the high points. It's kind of fun to think about, just even as a game. Anyone over here with the 80-20 rule? All we're going to do for this is we're going to apply the 80-20 rule, also known as the law of the vital few. The idea of the law of the vital few is there's some smaller percentage that produces your best outcomes, and this huge percentage that produces few outcomes. Guess what tends to suck our time and suck our energy, that 80%. So that's the principle probably known as 80-20. The law of the vital few, the basic idea is 20% of your effort produces 80% of your results. Everyone's heard that, right? So that's not new, so I don't have to spend much time on it. But it also means 80% of your effort only produces 20% of your results. Anyone notice a difference there? What if I'm doing one of my 20% things compared to one of my 80% things? If I'm doing one of my 20% that produces 80% versus an 80% that produces 20%, that is a 16-fold difference. Is there anything down here I can drop to make more room for that? Now, it's not exact, but if you want to know part of where it came from, it's been found consistently true that some small percentages, it has ranged from about 15% up to about 28%, produces between 70 and 95% of your outcomes. And these numbers have been found consistently in almost everything we study. And it's commonly around 80-20, thus we call it the 80-20 rule. There's always been a disparity, and this is what we found in wealth and income. We'll skip right to the numbers. No matter the culture, no matter the era of history, no matter the system of government, no matter how society was organized, there was always a disparity in wealth, power, and or income, insofar as any of those things were left to the ordinary course of things. Here's some actual numbers. If you have 1 million people and there's $1 billion, 80-20 rule tells us we should expect, just ordinary distribution, we should expect the top 200,000 of the million people will control 800 million of the dollars, right? 40,000 will control 64 million, 8,000 will control 51 million, 1,600 will control over 40 million, 320 will control 32 million, 50 will control 26 million, 10 will control 21 million, and 2 people will control 16 million of that dollars. And that would be considered a normal distribution. It's not a bell curve. That's what you would expect to find in any society where you have the ability to earn money. Is that interesting? That's normal disparity. So we want to hunt down our own vital few, because this is how we use this information. A key thing in there is think about this. So if the top 20% of people have on average 16 times as much money as people in that bottom 80%, do you need to become a member of the 1% to be really, really wealthy? No, you just need to be in the 20%. Can you find something you can do better than 4 out of 5 people? Yeah, any of us can. Now, if I tell you, you have to be in the top 1%, you got to be better than 99 out of 100 people. Well, that's a little daunting. I can be better than 1 out of 5. I mean, all of us have some talent talents or skills where we're better than 1 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, we can be in that top 20%. And statistically, that top 20% out-earns the bottom 80% by a 16-fold. So you just get in the top 20%, you can multiply the average income based on the bottom 80% by 16 times. That's amazing to think about. You go, well, that's achievable. I could be in the top 5th. I don't have to be in the top 1th of 100. So the way we use this vital few is we hunt down our own vital few of our own productivity. We focus on the shaping technique to figure out how we shape our vital few individually and team-wide so that we're doing more of the vital few. We make room for the vital few by reducing or eliminating the stuff on the opposite end. Because in that 80% of the stuff that only produces 20% of your results. Some of that is still producing results, right? Is your most worthless stuff. And 20% is your most worthless stuff. What if you could dump the whole bottom 20% that really is just wasting your time and replace it with a whole extra measure of that top 20%? What would happen to your productivity? It would more than double. And so this gets to be part of the tricky part. So in theory, that sounds easy, right? It's like, okay, good. So what do? What's the actual items on the list? Well, here's part of what we look to eliminate. Before you look for what your top 20% are, your vital few are, start with your useless stuff. What is your useless stuff? What is the stuff you do that really, honestly, it accomplishes nothing? And it might take a little work to be able to work it out, but it's a waste of time. Then there's meaningless stuff. Meaningless stuff means that it means nothing to us. Now, sometimes there's some stuff where it's useless, but it means something. Where, yeah, maybe watching most of those programs, it's useless. It doesn't get me anywhere, but it means something to me. I mean, I like it. I enjoy it. So that means it's useless, but it's meaningful. But if you have stuff, if you look at it, you find there's some useless and meaningless. Accomplishes nothing. It does nothing for us. It means nothing to me. Does anyone think you might, if you reflected on your life, you might find some of that? That you might find some useless stuff you did that doesn't mean anything to you. Now, sometimes you may find some stuff that means something to you, but there's much more efficient or effective ways of accomplishing that same goal. It gets worse than this thing. Less than useless actually does damage to our goals. Has anybody done something that kind of put you a step back from where you're aiming rather than move you forward? No. Anyone ever have an interaction with your kid that kind of puts you back from what you're aiming for with your kid? How about your spouse? How about your boss, employees? How about your customer? Anyone ever talked your way out of a sale? And you're thinking, I was like, what was I doing? He showed up and wanted to buy. I insisted on doing my presentation. I talked him out of it. That was less than useless. You invested time and energy to get further behind your starting line. And we do that. It's sense that like, how many people want to have a good relationship with your partner? That'd be probably all of us, right? How many people have ever engaged in behaviors with your partner that sabotages exactly that goal? That's probably all of us. And so part of the question is, when you realize if you do that at a consistent basis, you have a pattern of it, that tells you, okay, so I've got something I can change here. If it comes up with these random, unpredictable triggers out of nowhere, not much you can do about random, unpredictable out of nowhere. But if you notice there's a pattern, you can do something about the pattern. If I realize that I am bickering with my wife every morning, I can say, well, what are we bickering about? First off, if we're bickering about nothing, then my goal is simple. Just shut up. So you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, and that leads to a quiet morning that's better than the bickering. If I find that we're arguing about a particular thing, well, let's handle the thing. And if what I'm upset about is because I keep wanting her to do something that's like not her natural bent, so she's going to mess it up a lot. Okay, let me take it over. Or let's handle it the night before because I don't want to start my day with arguing. And for that, I'll sleep a lot better knowing the thing we usually argue about in the morning is handled the night before. So like before today, I mean, I know that I'm going to have an early start all day, all the way through a social evening. And so I know when I leave the house, I need all of my stuff for the day. Well, do I want to have to wake up at 5 o'clock this morning and start putting that together, or do I want to put that together last night before I go to bed? I had a good night's sleep. You know why I had a good night's sleep? My coat was out, my shirt was out, my tie was out, my other shirt was out, my casual clothes for tonight were out, all of my books were already in a box ready to be brought here. Everything was ready. I could go to sleep and not be thinking, what if I forget something? And then I get a good night's sleep, helps my sleep, wake up, good to go. I just get cleaned up, hop into one set of clothes, throw everything in the car, I'm done, I'm off. But there's less than meaningless. Actually produces a negative impact on us. Does anyone ever do anything that you feel bad when you're done? But you keep on doing it. That's the less than meaningless. So take those things out first. If it's moving you backwards, if it's draining you, get rid of those things. Why do the things that keep moving you backwards? So unless there's a compelling reason why those things have to be there, which then means, well, then this has meaning. It might make you feel bad, but it has more positive meaning than it makes you feel bad. Like if you have a parent with Alzheimer's disease, you know that it's never going to be a good interaction. But it's vitally important to you that you do it, and it's hugely meaningful, even though it's also draining. Okay, that's not a less than meaningless thing, that's a meaningful thing. It's just a draining meaningful thing. But if something's less than useless and less than meaningless, get those first, and then you go out of things that are both useless and meaningless. Most people will find a bunch of room just by doing that. What if you could find 20% space in your week by doing that? In a 24-hour day, does anyone know what 1% of a 24-hour day is? About 15 minutes. What if you could free up an hour? That's 4% of your day. Remember that 4% number. But take out the things that's less than useless, less than meaningless, useless and meaningless, then take out or reduce the things that are useless. Because if it's useless but it means something to you, just reduce it. If it's useless, then I can do without it. Well done. Then reduce things that are meaningless. Now this is something that has some utility, so you might also want to do some of it. It really doesn't mean anything to you. So just reduce that. You do all of that, you will probably find a lot of it. Few of us are surprised to find we waste time and energy. We can sometimes be surprised when we realize how much of our time and energy is invested in doing harm. It is stunning sometimes how much of our time and energy is invested in doing harm. One of the worst business consulting jobs I ever did, my whole first several chunk of months was spent on getting the boss to stop hurting his own business. And then what did he do at the end? He ignored everything I taught him. I was out of town. By the time I got back into town, he and his general manager had gotten into such a rip-roaring fight that he fired her and she quit. It was one of those. And they hated each other. And his business started really tanking after that because no one else knew her job. He dumped someone without a replacement ready to do her job. And so the amount of time and effort and energy he put into sabotaging his own business was enormous. He had to fire someone. I showed up to have lunch with him one time. The guy was sitting out there. He was the kind of business he sends his teams out in the morning. So if I show up at noon and this guy's sitting there, he's been sitting there since 9. Maybe 8. To be fired. So I fired him for. And there's a whole technique for that too. So when we start to reduce or eliminate at least helpful time, we often find plenty of time and energy for higher value things. Now here's the trick. We tend to allow any time we make to just suck in other useless and meaningless stuff. Anyone notice that? So you have to be purposeful about this. Once we start to make room, we look for our 20%. This takes reflection. This takes some thought. Now some people already know because their brain is already molded over. And they're just, oh, but I'm so busy. But the reason you feel so busy is because there's no time you're not doing something. The busy is an illusion. by time being filled. Because some of the time it's being filled by useless stuff. Some of the time it's being filled by meaningless stuff. Some of your time is being filled by stuff that's moving you backwards, not forwards. As you really get good at finding this 20%, as you spend some time reflecting on this is what you're really looking for. The 20% of the 20%. Because within that 20%, the top 1/5 of the top 1/5 produces 80% of the results of that top 1/5. That's a total of 65% of your results for your desired outcome. Now, just reflecting back on it, can anyone find any example in any part of your life where you realize, yeah, there was this one key thing that really did most of my good stuff for me? And as you reflect backwards, sometimes you find stuff like that. Like for me in my martial arts, a key exercise that I do that's produced most of my outcomes is a simple 10 repetition technique. When I'm working on something, I do 10 times slow, I do 10 times medium, I do 10 times fast, and I blast it as hard and fast as I can once. And I find that I get more outcome out of that 10 repetition drill than I usually do out of an entire class. And so if I know that, I can either spend 4 hours training and finish my training time and go, okay, it's a little less fuzzy than it was before. Or I can do this 10-time blast. I can be done in 20 minutes, and I can get the exact same outcome. Would I rather have the outcome in 20 minutes, or would I rather have the outcome in 4 hours? Well, if I need that 3 hours for something else, I'll take the 20 minutes. I have 40 minutes to make my transition. I got 3.5 extra hours out of that day by the way I did that. So that's what you're really looking for. It's the ultimate express of working really smart while you're still working hard. So all you have to do is start to think about what is that top 20% for me? What does it for me? What are the things I need to put in there? While looking for where can I make room. Now here's one of the tricks. Don't make the room until you know what you're putting in. Look to see how much room you can make, but don't make it yet. Because what will happen is you make the room, something else will get sucked in there. And our subconscious is genius. It's much smarter than we are. It catches us. Doesn't matter how intelligent we are, it sneaks up and it does stuff to us and outwits us at every turn. So I start looking and my mindset is, okay, take out all the less than useless things, take out all the less than meaningless things, get rid of those things, they're gone. And because my subconscious knows the stuff I'm getting rid of is these low value things, it's going to suck in something just above the threshold that I'm willing to get rid of. Where it's a little bit useful, it's a little bit meaningful, and it fills it in, and then I get resistance to then wanting to dump that in, even though I was perfectly fine with that for years, because my subconscious is trying to stop me from having to make big changes. Because change is scary to the subconscious. Because we try to predict the future. What's the number one way you predict the future? By the past. You look at the past up to the present, you see the pattern. If I radically change right now, my subconscious doesn't know how to predict the future from there. It can only guess. And so there'll be this natural resistance. That's why you have to be so purposeful out of it. And if I take out that stuff first, it's going to say, shit, back in there. Because I don't want that guy, because he's going to make me do some wacky stuff. Find the wacky stuff first. Make them shove it in there. So I know what I'm doing, and then I can get some momentum going before my subconscious knows what happened. I got to outwit that subconscious. And think about how powerful this is. In dollars and cents, we figure out the high value activities, we do more of those. The top 20 units of work produce 80 units of productivity. That 1 unit of work is producing 4 units of output, bottom 80% of the point here is 16 times. A 16-fold increase in productivity by shifting from a bottom 80% thing to a top 20% thing. Now, a salesperson multiplied his income. In his case, it wasn't quite 16. I think he multiplied his income at 12-fold. When he realized that what his slowdown period was paperwork. So he said, well, why am I doing paperwork? His boss said, well, paperwork's got to be done. He said, well, but why do I have to do it? So, well, it's got to be done. Yeah, but do I have to do it? And then, no, actually, I guess not. So it just has to be done. So he hired an assistant, paid the assistant $12 an hour, while he was going out there and he was making $200 an hour. And now he has no paperwork to do. He just has to give his assistant the information. She does the paperwork while he goes and sees more people. And then he doesn't even have to go back into the office to fill out the paperwork and submit it because he's phoning it in now because he has someone else there who's filling out all the paperwork and can take it out to the text. So that he's just out in the field the whole time. That he picks up his list and he just goes. Well, what it used to be is he'd go and if he got a sale, he had to go to the office to fill out the paperwork and then submit it to the text and then he could head back out. And it was realized how much time he's spending kind of sorting his cards, deciding who we're going to call, checking his list. And he realized, like, you know, really, I'm only working 4 hours a day. I'm not working 8 hours a day, and I'm doing a lot of paperwork. And he realized, ultimately, he was seeing an average of 1, sometimes 2 potential clients in a day. Well, now he heads out in the morning, his assistant organizes everything for him. He's not even doing that anymore. And now he's out there, he's seeing 8 people a day. It's about an hour per contact. He's making a whole lot more sales. He's created a lot more synergy, so his close rate has gone up. And he's closing bigger deals and with more people, with more referrals and more contacts that he can hardly keep up. And he increased his income 12-fold by doing this, figuring out where am I wasting my time. Like, well, doing paperwork's not making me any money. I know it needs to get done. Someone else can do the paperwork. Let me pay someone to do paperwork. Now, meanwhile, the other one, she's happy, and she's got a job, and she told you to do anything you want until I call you. When I call you, you need to do the paperwork. So get some young college girl there, and she's doing her homework. Phone rings, she fills out paperwork for an hour, submits it, goes back to her homework. She's happy, she's getting paid to do homework. He's happy, he's getting paid to make sales and doesn't have to do paperwork and doesn't have to drive back to the office. So all of these little tricks and stuff that was enormously powerful for him. So if I focus on the highest value stuff, I get someone else to do the lower value stuff. I don't have to do the lower value stuff. I don't have to do the minimum wage job. I can pay someone minimum wage to do the minimum wage job. If I've got something else I could be doing that could be making me $100, and I'm going to be doing a job I could have paid someone $10 to do, what am I doing? Right? So you can get lots of easy online stuff done by virtual assistants, by a virtual assistant, a VA, for just $5 with Fiverr. Because I had some stuff I had to go research and say, like, I'm going to spend all this time on the websites, and oh, heck with that. I went on Fiverr. I paid some virtual assistant in some other country $5 and told, this is what I need you to go find for me. And the next day, I get back another email that has the whole list of the stuff I wanted to go look at. That I didn't want to spend my time doing. And for whatever country she was based in, $5 is some money for her. $5 is a waste of time for me. I didn't want to spend an hour doing that. She did it for $5. And so if you have that kind of thing that can be done online, $5 for a virtual assistant. It's crazy. Now it has to be very simple, straightforward stuff with a $5 virtual assistant. But for a whole bunch of stuff, you need people to make calls for you. You can find people to do that for about minimum wage pay, even sometimes less than minimum wage by our country's pay. And because of the way phone services work with the VoIP, that they can make international calls from India, from anywhere. And for them, $5 an hour, $10 an hour, I mean, that's some serious money for them. So they're really happy, and then you get your easy work done. Now, if you need some slightly more sophisticated work, well, then hire someone in. But it's amazing how much you can get done, and when you begin to realize how many things we spend our time on that we could get done for just a few dollars. I got to fill my tank. So we can make our life into whatever thing of beauty that we choose for ourselves. We can, we really can. We look for our 4%. Start out looking for your 20%. And take any high-value item and stick it in place. Look for the most meaningless, less than meaningless, the most useless, less than useless thing that you have going on, and just carve out a piece of that and drop in the 20% item. It'll make a huge difference. Huge. Trick is to make space by putting low-value activities and filling that space with high-value activities. Very simple. I will tell you, to actually do it requires discipline. I am a 9th degree black belt. You think I'd have more discipline than I have? This is hard for me. It's hard to remember it for me. But you want to know how silly it gets sometimes? I just finished a 100-day sprint. And so that's doing a fast sprint, trying to get a bunch of stuff, and a whole list of it. I remember to put my social life on my goal list. You know why I had to put my social life on my goal list?
Because you won't have one if you don't have none.
Yeah, because if I don't make it a goal, I'll just get busy doing my list. And I'll forget that, oh yeah, people. I want to spend time with people. Well, you know what I forgot to put on my list? Those television programs I wanted to keep up on. So guess what happened? The whole 100 days. I forgot about it. Well, because I watch them on the computer usually while I'm doing something else, when I'm doing lower time-intensive stuff. So I completely forgot. So my 100 days is over, and then suddenly I wonder what's going on in my programs. Some of my programs, I had missed episodes. They dropped off because they only had the last 5 episodes. So that means if I don't get to it for 6 episodes, I don't know what happened to that one. And 2 of my programs that happened. I think 2 more of my programs, the only reason it didn't happen is they took a break. So I tried it. It says 2 days before expiration. Oh, I got to watch that one. I had 3 programs I had to watch because there were the 3 days of expiry. And so I said, well, I'm going to spend some time on Facebook and catch up on that and catch up on some of this paperwork and clean my office. On the plus side, my office got good. I cleaned my office while I was catching up on television. So I was doing a physical thing, cleaning the office, while my mental thing was paying attention to the shows. Although a couple of times I had to back it up because I got involved organizing something and I missed something that happened. I go, wait, what just happened? I'm backing up and fine. I had to put my television programs on my list. I didn't think about that until I missed some of them. But that's how silly our busy gets sometimes. We can forget that we're married. We can forget that we're a parent. We just get so busy, time just goes flying by. I had one friend, when she and I got together, I was helping her with her taxes, and I realized, actually, I haven't seen you since my birthday. And we had talked about when I saw her on my birthday, I hadn't seen her for 6 months before that. So, we kind of need to not be in this once every 6 month habit. But if we want to be friends, we should try to see each other more than every 6 months. And it's been 2. I said, okay, I saw you 2 months in a row, I'm okay for a while. But think about the things you have to put on your list sometimes. And if I'm going to spend some time with her, do I want to just be a killer time thing, or do I want to be a 4% thing if I can? A 4% thing, I don't see that often. I have a lot of friends that are like that. My Vegas friends are like that. Because I'm only in Las Vegas once or twice a year. And I have a whole bunch of friends in Las Vegas now. I'm not entirely sure how that happened. I actually know more people in Las Vegas than I know here, if you don't count the martial arts people. Most of the people I know here, I know through martial arts. So that's the only reason my numbers are bigger here. You take out martial arts, I know more people there. So I'm looking for high point stuff at every single person I see. Because I might not see them for a year. It's easy to theorize. It's harder to do. It takes practice. So don't worry if you try it and it doesn't work. Don't worry if you try it and you blow it. Give yourself ramp-up time. Give yourself test time. Let it be okay to get a C on this when you start. What percentage is a C grade? 70 to 80%, right? So what are you doing? And okay, you tried it with 3 things. You did it on 2 of them. Good start. And give yourself some ramp-up time when you try it, and if it doesn't work, no big deal. Spend the first 30 days tinkering. Say, okay, I can do this better. I have to put this in. Maybe if I do that, well, maybe that's more important than this. Oh, no, I thought I could take that out. Turned out I can't take that out. That's got to be back in. Maybe I can take this out. Maybe I can do this instead. Hey, maybe I can do these 2 things at the same time. Maybe we can kill the 2 birds with one stone here and find some double duty down here. So spend some time reflecting on some of the no value or negative value activities that you can reduce or stop. If you already know you have room in your time and a bit of energy, you can even skip that step and just start adding in the other stuff. I would suspect in this room, most of us are pretty busy. So you probably have to go find some movement. Then consider your highest value activity. What is in your own personal top 20%? I've had to spend a lot of time considering what's in my top 20%. And what actions actually produce results. Now that's another, because when I was figuring out my top 20%, not all my top 20% were actually producing results. I had to actually look at that and, yeah, that's really not top 20% because it's the top 20% result producer. It was a top 20% because I liked it, not because it actually was working for me. And so I had to shift that. Figure out what works for you. You can even do this mental activity while you're doing something else relatively mindless. Think about it while you're driving, think about it while you're standing in line. This doesn't have to be a sit down and really work it out thing, but if you have time to sit down and really give this some thought, do that. If you wake up at 2 a.m. with an idea about it, write it down now. As soon as you get it on paper, you can fall right back asleep. If you don't get it on paper, it might keep you up, if you're lucky. Worst thing is, it gets you up and you go, oh, I'll totally remember that in the morning. I know I'm not the only one who did that. And in the morning you look at it and say, oh, what was that idea? Oh, it was good too. And then I can't remember. Dedicating time to it will work better. Here's how you do this, brainstorming. Here's your basic brainstorming idea. Write down at least 20 ideas. If some of them seem stupid, that's perfect. If none of them seem stupid, keep going. Stupid ideas show that you're letting go of having to prejudge an idea before you allow yourself to have it. If you want to do some serious brainstorming, you can't keep prejudging. If you look at a list of 20 and all of them are very reasonable ideas, that tells you you're still prejudging. You have to get to the place where you think, okay, now that's down, that's it. Well, write it down, good. Yeah, and sometimes you get to the genius ideas down deep in the recesses of your buried brilliance. And you have to get past your reason, because if your rational brain could easily come up with this stuff, you'd probably already be doing it. And if you dive down deep, sometimes you will find something or you will remember something, and this idea will come bubbling up in the top of it. That's genius, I totally forgot about that. That is so much a better way to do this. And so look for that step, and that step is on the other side of stupid ideas. And allow yourself to have the stupid ideas, get the stupid ideas down on paper, and then let your brain keep going. And the stupid ideas will often be where you find the seed of genius. Because you write the stupid thing down because you're just half being silly, but that creative, playful, silly part of you had this really good seed. And it kind of threw it in there. You did something silly with it. But then sometimes you go back and you look, oh wait, if I take that stupid, silly idea at number 19, and I combine that with that perfectly logical idea at number 3, and I weave those together creatively, I got some genius here. And you may end up in a whole different direction. Because, does anyone here have a coach? Everyone have coaches? I hope everyone has coaches. I have several coaches. One of my newer coaches is working with me on basically where I should focus my energy as my entry point. She's looked at all of my books. She's looked at all of my programs. And she says, I don't think what you're trying to do is where you should be doing it. He says, it looks to me from what I see that your focus should be on men and relationships. That hadn't occurred to me. So she's having me look at a completely different direction. I didn't get there. I ran down my whole 20. I didn't have the stupid silly. It took outside eyes to look at something. And then here's what I want you to say. Is too much relationship stuff is basically the woman is right, the man is wrong. Your stuff is just logical and systematic. Whole bunch of stuff. The biggest problem she says I have the men in my life have is so much of the relation is it's too touchy-feely. It doesn't make sense to them. They can't quite get a grip on it. So your stuff is very clean. And so the average guy can follow your stuff. The average woman can follow your stuff. The average woman can follow John Gray. The average man looks at John Gray and goes, I get some of it. I don't know what he's talking about with some of it. And it says, the men need your stuff. The women who love the men need your stuff so they can actually have a conversation with the man can understand. So that when she turns off the TV and says, honey, we need to talk, he doesn't go, oh my God. That means I'm not going to understand half of what's about to happen. And so she's pointing in a completely different direction, and that's part of the brainstorming with a partner on that. I mean, I did the whole thing. We were going back and forth for a week. And she said, what do you think of this idea? But you're not allowed to tell me what you think of this idea for 2 days. But think about it. Because my first reflex is, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. The next day I'm going, you know, kind of see what you're talking about. The after that, I go, that could work. So you brainstorm. It's on the other side where your brain lets go of all of its preconceptions is where you will find a genius. After you have at least 20 ideas, some of them should be stupid. But you want at least 20% stupid ideas. If you have 20% stupid, you'll have at least 4 stupid ideas on your list of 20 you not have. Then you use logic and reason to determine which ones really are your high value activities. See if you can find the top 20% of the top 20%, that's your 4% items. And if you can find one of those, you've got it made. Make your own masterpiece. Do in every area of life you can, create your own personal treasure, your own personal crown jewels of your own personal kingdom that is your life. That you are king, you are queen, your life is your kingdom, your marriage is your kingdom, your family is your kingdom, and you're building it. You're not letting it run you over. You're living your life. Even one baby step in this process can be huge. They add up exponentially. The adventure is waiting for the adventurer. So be the adventuring queen. Be the adventuring king. And live your life. Thank you. For everybody who's here, what do you get for being here is this one.